The Smart Buildings Academy podcast with Phil Zito, episode 423. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to episode 423 of the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk about smart buildings and sustainable practices. You probably noticed over the past couple episodes, we've been doing a lot of focus on building owners. Well, that's not without a reason. We're going to be expanding our training services to building operators and building engineers. We've actually got a couple large opportunities underway, and we're building out an entire curriculum dedicated to building operators, building engineers, facility managers, etc. So look forward to that coming. It's actually in development right now. So definitely will keep you posted. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a lot of really cool stuff. You've probably heard about smart buildings. You've heard them described by multiple different people in multiple different ways. What makes me justified to talk to you about this today? Well, I used to be the integration program manager for smart buildings at a large OEM where I worked on large healthcare opportunities, large commercial real estate, transportation, etc., and actually did a lot of the things people make posts about. So I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't work. I've seen this from a energy efficiency perspective. I've seen it from a sustainability perspective, and I've seen it from an occupant experience perspective. I get all of this. So that's that background that comes. We're going to be doing some things different on the podcast moving forward. We're going to be giving you all little exercises at the end of the podcast. So for those of you who stick around till the end, you're going to get an exercise with a resource that you can actually utilize at the end of the podcast to actually do what we're learning today. I want to turn these podcasts more into educational sessions rather than just the world according to Phil. So with that being said, let's dive in. As always, everything's going to be available at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423. Once again, that's podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423. As you know, we haven't been on for the past week because they've been doing some drywalling in my office. I think the drywaller's gone for the day, but there's a high possibility that he could walk back in here during the podcast. So I apologize if that does indeed happen. But let's dive in. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring up some resources on the screen. So we're going to be looking at a couple different things as we move through. First thing I want to bring to your attention right here is this Climate Smart Buildings Initiative by FEMP, or the Federal Energy Management Program. It's one of the resources I highly recommend you understand, because with federal buildings being, or the federal government being one of the largest holders of commercial assets and square footage, at least in the United States, they are definitely going to have a disproportionate impact on sustainability, on energy initiatives, et cetera, that we see permeate the commercial sector. So as we go through things, I want us to be able to refer back, and I'll be sharing these resources as we go through the podcast. If you're listening to this on the audio after the fact, definitely go to podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423, because there will be some details around this topic, this episode, that are best seen visually. So for us, we want to really do smart buildings. Smart buildings, depending on who you believe and who you listen to, they have a higher asset value. So they increase asset value, they increase tenant retention, they can increase the health of the building, they can increase operational efficiency. And most lately, one of the key focal points is they can increase the energy efficiency and reduce the carbon footprint of the built asset. So how do we get to this point? Well, you'll notice one of the big ways is with the Inflation Reduction Act, the funding of energy savings performance contracts, the utility energy service contracts. There's a variety of different things that are going on. But what I want to do is actually take a step back from this, actually look a step higher and talk about this thing called smart buildings. So we really started to hear about smart buildings kind of back in 2012. That's really when I started noticing it coming across more and more. Let's look up real quickly Division 25 specification. Let's see, like, when did it come into being? I don't remember. I think it was like 2015. If anyone in the chat feels free, feel free. Creation date. Let's take a look. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find it. When was it created? I'm not going to spend a whole ton of time looking for this, but I feel like it was right around 2015-ish that it really started to hit my radar more and more. And I see Abby in there as well. So Abby, great seeing you in the LinkedIn chat talking about 179 Delta, of which you did a great podcast with Julian Palacios, our Director of Business Development. Definitely, folks, go check that out. I'll link to that at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423. But the thing I want to step back is this evolution of smart buildings, because we've heard everything, right? You've heard SPOG, single pane of glass. You've heard BIM. You've heard digital twins. You've heard energy, grid interactive buildings, etc. But a smart building essentially is a building that through technology or processes automates or increases the efficiency, the operations of a facility. So a lot of people hear smart buildings and they get really overwhelmed. They think it needs to be this thing with a data layer. It needs to be super integrated, etc. Quite frankly, in my experience, a lot of buildings are dumb, even with building automation systems. So a smart building to me is a building that utilizes its technology to achieve a use case. Now, that use case has shifted, right, over time. And I'm going to give you kind of a crash course in building technologies, in enterprise architectures, things like that. But suffice to say, you have a concept called BDAT, which is Business Data Application Technology. It's a standard acronym for enterprise architecture. Enterprise architecture is a concept of looking at different technological domains, typically within IT, but it has expanded to the smart building space. And you look at these technical domains, and based on these technical domains, I'm going to turn my air conditioning on in here. In these technical domains, right, you will have things like building automation, lighting, access control, video surveillance, conveyance, energy management, etc. And with these different domains, you are going to tie them together, hence the Master Systems Integrator, or MSI, to achieve a use case. That use case, right, can be any sort of things. I'm going to talk about a very simple use case that is very commonly done. And it is an occupancy integration use case. And this hits that occupant experience. It hits energy reduction. It hits asset optimization and asset utilization. What you do is you take Microsoft Outlook or some form of calendar software, utilizing the API from that software, you ingest any of the schedules, and then you take those schedules and you feed them into your building automation schedule. Then what that does is you have a schedule set for each individual conference room. And when that conference room is scheduled, well, now it will go and pre-cool that space. And if that occupancy is canceled, it'll turn off the HVAC and put it back in standby. That reduces energy consumption. That ensures a space is optimally conditioned prior to the person coming to the office space. And it ensures that that asset is being appropriately utilized. So that's a very basic concept of a smart building. And if you take anything from this session, I believe in my experience, people are getting really confused by who are the roles in smart buildings. What are the layers in smart buildings? Really just identify the use case, identify who uses that use case and the technologies associated with that use case. A smart building does not need to be this massively complex thing. It can be as simple as a basic use case, as I just described. Let's go through a couple of, since this is focused on green and sustainability, let's talk through some of the key sustainability practices that are being utilized in smart buildings. And let's talk through a couple examples of how each one can be done. The first and easiest one to describe, right, is energy efficiency and conservation. It's pretty straightforward. We've all heard of, well, I'm not going to say we all, but most of our audience has heard of Guideline 36, right? You've heard of Guideline 36. You understand that Guideline 36 is these optimized sequences for HVAC equipment. You've probably heard of energy conservation measures. And energy conservation measures are measures to conserve energy. So one of the key practices that you're going to see utilized, as Abby mentioned in the chat on LinkedIn, 179 Delta, doing the ASHRAE 90.1 baseline and then implementing energy conservation measures to reduce to that baseline to get essentially tax credits, for lack of a better word. That is one you're going to see that's going to be implemented by and large. And you're just going to see general energy monitoring and energy reporting as well. These are all energy efficiency practices. A big one that came about during COVID is indoor environmental quality or indoor air quality. I like to differentiate the two because environmental quality is more than just air quality. Have you ever been in an office and the lighting sucks? It's terrible and you feel yourself going to sleep. Or the sound, there's this sound from the HVAC duct shaking, or there's a vibration that's hurting your ears. That is indoor environmental quality. And it's a big focal point now that people are choosing, they're making the choice whether or not to go into an existing building. You know, that is actually, I'm part of a small business group, and we were talking this morning about as AI replaces more workers, are we going to see the death of commercial real estate? Are we going to see, commercial real estate buildings be replaced with residential or data center usage because AI requires data center and compute? So if you have one of those remaining office buildings, you need to keep it attractive for the tenants. And of that, indoor environmental quality is key to attracting tenants into the built environment. It's one of the key factors. Let's talk about some of the innovations in smart buildings technology that you can utilize to go and achieve these goals. Now, like I said, this is going to be very high level, this episode, but at the end of the episode, we're going to get into some actual strategies. So thing is, whenever you hear of an innovation in smart building technology, I want you to think of a couple things. One, has it been utilized before? Two, is this company still going to be in existence? Are there alternate companies that do similar things so that if this company goes out of business, you can go and still do this technology? Good thing is, most of the things I'm going to talk about here, they are and have been in existence for a better part of a decade. First off, connected devices. This is an area that was pretty impressive at AHR over this past year, seeing some of the things Belimo's doing, seeing some of the things the other input and output device providers are doing around connected devices. There's even talk of devices that will have analytics in them at the edge. I know Belimo's looking at that in some of their different IO devices, and it'll be very interesting to see how those things are utilized to increase sensor density, which increases analytics, which increases your ability. Sounds like someone's here. Let me check. Like I said, it's utter chaos at the Zito household. And my dog is randomly barking, so I apologize if you all hear that. It has been one heck of a week. My wife has been out in Illinois because her mom had heart surgery, and I've been running the house, and they cut holes in everything in my office. So it's awesome. Great. Energy management systems, that's going to be huge. Electrification, it's coming, whether you like it or not. I'm not going to get into how I feel on the topic. Suffice to say, we have grids that are already not really performing too well. So it's going to be really important if you have to move down that electrification path that you have a strategy to manage the utility consumption and demand in your facilities. You have an ability to understand where your utilities are coming from. And if there's an impact to those utilities, you have mitigation strategies, especially if you're like healthcare or a data center or some critical facility. So energy management systems are going to be huge for that. And it's an area that the education has not been great in. And it's one that I would like to see expanded. We're internally looking at how to expand that kind of education. And then, as always, the Guideline 36, the Title 24, all of the metering analytic strategies, these are things that you should be aware of. And there's a lot of technology in that space as well. Let's keep driving along. Let's talk about some strategies. I want you to leave this with some things you can do right now that will help you. The first thing I recommend all facility owners do, if you are not just, a 2-story investment project, oh my gosh, 2-story investment building. I don't know what word I was trying to use that started with a P, but none of them worked. So the first thing I recommend you do is to do an energy audit and benchmarking. We've done a lot of episodes on this. We'll probably do an episode where we actually screen share and do an energy audit and benchmarking in the future, although that may be a webinar. But this is something that it is not terribly difficult for you to go to this resource right here, the Facility Management Institute, right? This tool, and you can go and start to actually learn how to do certain things. You can go and you can click on energy, and you can start to look at like, how do I do submetering? And there's different interactive things that you can do around submetering. And you can also, there's things you can do about analytics. So we can go to our tools, right? And we can go and actually figure out kind of how do we do this. There's a whole ton of stuff, and maybe we'll do a whole episode on this at some point. But energy audits and benchmarking are huge. Obviously, have your goals set, and your metrics is usually going to be driven by your AHJ. We went through in our previous podcast, ASHRAE Standard 228. And one of the big things it hits from a reporting perspective of carbon and energy is the authority having jurisdiction. Unless you're a federal or state facility, usually you're going to be at the mercy of the AHJ and the standards they enforce in your local municipality. So you definitely want to be diving into what those are, and then kind of being ahead of the curve, understanding what's coming, and then based on that, using that information to drive your goals and metrics. Unless you're, like a Fortune 500, and that will usually be cascaded down from a corporate governance. Obviously, you want to train people, right? But one of the things we're building into our owner-operator training is actual sustainability education. So understanding what are the different standards? What's 90.1? What's 228? How do you understand who your AHJ is? How do you understand your local reporting structures? How do you go and run reports? What is time of use? What are different rate structures? What are ratchet clauses? You may be thinking to yourself, a building operator doesn't need to understand this. And I would say, yeah, I agree that that's more of an energy manager's role. But what happens when your building operator turns on all the air handlers at the same time at your hospital and drives you into a new demand structure because all of those units hit their locked rated amps? Oh my gosh, I just butchered that acronym. At the same time. and it went and caused your demand charge to go higher and put you in a new ratchet. Those can be things that with proper education you can avoid, and you want to be able to avoid those. The next thing I want to talk about is being able to do integration. A lot of existing assets. I have a feeling that we're going to slow down in new capital projects. Renovations are going to pick up. And one of the parts of renovations is you don't want to just rip everything out. A lot of the systems that exist right now can be integrated. So you want to integrate, and understanding how to integrate technology together, both building automation, but as well as other building systems to achieve your use cases. That's going to be huge. Let's go real quickly. Let me look at how we're doing with time here. We're at 20 minutes. Let's go real quickly and let's talk about some exercises that we can actually do here. First thing let's talk about is assessing your facility's current sustainability practices and identify areas for improvement. All right. So if we want to do that, if we want to go and assess, then we're going to have a tool right here. And one of the best tools I've found is this life cycle assessment. What this life cycle assessment is going to do is going to give us all of these different areas that we can assess. I really hope y'all can't hear this dog barking. I love my dog, but sometimes she annoys the crap out of me. But you're going to see this come into play more and more and more and more. You'll hear about committed carbon. You're going to hear about all these terms. But one of the things is right here, this use. This is what the building operators and engineers can affect. I'm going to shut my door. Give me 1 second. I'm going to shut my door. This is really bothering me. I'm sure you all probably can't hear it. Oh, man, that paint smell is strong. Talk about indoor air quality. Woo, makes my eyes water. Y'all weren't hearing the dog bark, were you? I hope not. Drives me insane. It was super distracting. Where was I? Okay, so talking about the use. So this is where a lot of you are going to focus, because you don't really have effect on product and construction. You don't have effect on end of life. So what we want to do is we want to start to evaluate our use, our maintenance, repair, replacement, refurbish, energy use, water use. And so if you dive into these, they're going to give you kind of standards and different things you can do. But I'm going to back up here, and what I want to show you. Oh, where did it go? I had it up, and then I think I clicked on the wrong thing. Where did it go? Oh my goodness gracious. I figures I would. Oh, there it is. So in right here, as you start to look at the various areas you can go, if you go to this building systems upgrade and you click on this, optimize energy performance, right? It's going to give you all of these kind of sub bullets you can do, right? So you're going to see things like vacancy. You're going to see things like schedules, your power management, energy management systems, etc. With the lighting, right? And this is where I said there's a ton of stuff we can go into. But you could dive into each one of these individual kind of sub bullets here, and it's going to give you individual things that you can do and knock out, and you'll see it. But what I want you to do with the time you have is to sit here and think about what specific challenge are you facing in your facility right now. If you are just getting started, maybe you're experiencing, I don't know how we're performing from an energy perspective. I don't know how we're performing from a facility perspective. Maybe sub-metering is your initial strategy. And so as you can see on my screen, it talks about sub-metering. Maybe you have like your total demand and consumption at the main incoming meter, but maybe you don't realize what systems are utilizing what load. And so maybe implementing a sub-metering strategy would be a good first step for you. In which case, you can see right here, it talks about how to define sub-metering. So if we go in here, it talks about sub-metering, and it's going to kind of talk about here's the meters, here's how we go and integrate this in here. How do we integrate into our design process the meters? It's got all of that. What are the system impacts? What does it do? You know, how does it affect behavior? What are the financial aspects? You see, it's got some really powerful stuff in here. How do you go and you do your system your system bundling? What can you bundle it with? Like building automation, obviously, optimizing. What are your mandates? And you can see different mandates requiring metering. Gives you all of the different standards. It's pretty cool tool. It's not always up to date, but it gets you close enough and gives you a lot of resources and case studies. Hopefully you all find this as cool as I found it. It's quite frankly how I probably should have started the podcast, to be honest. But like I said, I saved the really cool stuff to the end. But that's what you do. So if you have a couple ideas, right, you just simply go and you go to plan, right? You go to building system, go to building system upgrades, or you can go to building operation and maintenance, whatever it is. And then based on that, you then are able to go and figure out kind of what do you want to do. So I encourage you, spend 30 minutes, go through, identify something you want to impact, and then go and research how to impact it and build yourself a financial case, a design case, and implement it in your facility. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us at podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423. Once again, that's podcast.smartbuildingsacademy.com/423. See if anybody has any questions. And then I'm going to get out of here because I'm smelling the paint. Now I shut the door. And, yeah. All right. Nothing on YouTube. Nothing on LinkedIn. We're good there. And nothing on Facebook. I'll pause. Hang here for just a second. Have you all seen this before? Were you aware of this tool? It's pretty freaking cool, in my opinion. It's a pretty good tool, pretty powerful tool. Be very interested if you've used this at all. It's one of the cooler things that I've seen from a tool perspective. Yeah. And if you ever want to understand about purchasing, you can see like guidelines. And utilize the government and all of their research and their buying power to kind of go and do a lot of digging for you as an owner operator. They have a lot of resources that can kind of help you with this kind of stuff. You can see it, right? Buyer resources, tools, all sorts of things. So if you're like, hey, I want to figure out some sort of tool for something, well, then you can come in here and say, hey, HVAC mechanical, you want to understand stuff. See, it's pretty neat. The ability to just kind of go and research. I know we're going like so off topic right now, but it's, in my opinion, one of the cooler things that you can do here. And with that, I'll see what questions, if any, and not really seeing any. So I'm going to get out of this paint-filled room because it's making my eyes water. But thanks so much for being here. We're back. I've got all these episodes scheduled for the week. We got a lot of really cool stuff we're going to be going through. If you want me to dive further into this, and kind of explore the sustainable facilities tool with you more, let me know. It's a pretty cool tool. And I could definitely show you how I've used it in the past to do research and to kind of help guide owners in designing their facilities and laying things out for a retrofit. With that being said, please, if this has been valuable, share it. Go and share it on LinkedIn. Just hit the share. Go and like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day. This will be up later tonight, so you'll be able to access it later this evening. Thanks so much, everybody, and I hope you all have an awesome day.